I built a business. I did my best. I extracted wealth. And from extracting that wealth, I was able to launch something without fear. I started it by thinking like, oh, this can do good. And then the fact that I can do well and do good came from losing the fear by building a good, healthy business where I extracted wealth. The legacy of the past is she built something substantive so that she could build something immensely meaningful.
Welcome to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, Eric Tash. Join us as we delve into the world of impactful business leaders who are setting the bar high. Worthy for 30 carefully curates its guests, engaging with business trailblazers who embody the ethos of doing good while doing well. In each episode, we extract actionable tips and wisdom from these visionaries, offering you a blueprint to merge success with social impact. Ready to elevate your business game? Let's dive in and learn how to do good while thriving. Worthy for 30, where purpose meets profit. Welcome back to another episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, Eric Tash. With me today is an entrepreneur, someone who is on a mission-driven journey with her new company, which we'll get into. Carrie Kerpen joins me today. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carrie, just to give you some context, I think I may have communicated this to you when we first connected. Worthy for 30, the premise is really to talk to business leaders who are doing good while doing well. And as part of this preparation for our conversation, Carrie, I had the pleasure of listening to your conversation with Cass Lazaro of Buddy Media, a person who's near and dear to my heart. When I was at Buddy Media, and we'll get into this later on in the conversation, Cass and Mike, and I get a little choked up when I think about this. Invited Jennifer Goodman-Lynn, who's no longer with us, the co-founder of Cycle for Survival, to speak to the organization. And Buddy Media at that time, and I think this was winter of 2011, maybe at 150, 200 people all the way on the west side of Manhattan. And that really, oh my God, that really struck a chord with me, where you have these two incredible multi-exited entrepreneurs who made a point to do good while doing well. And I think that is just, again, I constantly reference this. Last week, I had Jason Schulweiss of the Female Quotient, and we were talking about connecting dots. And that's a dot that I really appreciate that I was able to connect from 2011 to now, starting this podcast, to talk with individuals like yourself, Carrie.
Well, it's probably part of why they do it, right? It's like when I think about Cass and Mike, they dedicate so much of their time to doing good. And the fact that it had that impact on you and that you now carry that forward is just as much a part of their legacy as their exits and their success and all of it. I think it's probably what they care the most about, honestly.
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely their legacy and their impact that they have on the people they come in contact with. And speaking of husband and wife co-founders, you and your husband, Dave, founded Likeable Media. When was that?
We founded one of the first social media agencies, which was Likeable Media, in 2007, before there were really any social media agencies, right around the time of Buddy opened shortly thereafter. But yeah, it was quite a ride.
Yeah. And so 2007, and then fast forward, when did you exit?
So Dave and I started in 2007. Dave left as a serial entrepreneur to start some new ventures in 2013. And then I took it through to exit in 2021. And I worked for the acquirer for 3 years, just exiting last May. And then from that point to now, you founded the Whisper Group, which officially opened its doors in June of this year. That's right.
What was that inflection point for you to decide, okay, this is going to be my next chapter?
Yeah. So there were a couple of things. So when Dave left the business in 2013, it was we had a fast growing social media agency because there were no social media agencies. And so we had captured a lot of market share, but we really didn't know a lot about what it took to build a business that would be sellable, right? It was fast growing. It wasn't yet super profitable. Social media in 2013 was not the same as it was in 2007, where like nobody had any clue. So the competition was more fierce. And then, as a leader, for me, I felt that the leaders around me were all like these loud, extroverted men. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this business. And I ended up reading a book called Built to Sell by John Warlow, which really impacted me. It talked about how to build a business to be able to make it a sellable asset, which I did, and then took it through to exit. But in that process, I realized that I felt very alone. There weren't a lot of women before me that I felt like who had really exited these businesses of substance, like built this stuff. And I was like, wow, I just found it very lonely. I'm sitting in a room full of men. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know who to talk to about this because it feels like you're the only person ever going through this, only woman ever that's gone through this. And so for me, what I wanted to do was build a collective of exited female founders that could help with exit readiness for women-owned businesses. And that was the idea behind Whisper. And Whisper stands for the 7 tenets needed to build a sellable asset and then take your lifestyle business and turn it into a life-changing asset. So it's understanding your why, your how, your income, your secret sauce, your profitability, your executive team, and your roar factor. In other words, how you're going to present in that room full of men when they are tearing apart your business.
Okay. Yes. And it's great that you broke down the 7 components of the methodology of the Whisper Group. How important is it for a female entrepreneur to have that mentorship? Because when you come into the Whisper Group, you are paired with a mentor that helps you through that process from inception to scale to exit.
I think it's essential because you want to understand, for me, when I was coming up through business, there were lots of coaches, there were lots of advisors, lots of people, but I never felt like there was somebody who had actually been in my shoes. And so the thing that was so important with the Whisper Group was that I knew that I could advise an agency really well on their exit. I could do evaluation. I could help them say, okay, do X, Y, Z, fix these hourly rates, do this with this new business, because I'd been there. But I didn't want to do that for like a cookie company. A CPG company would have a totally different experience. And so what I wanted to do was get people who had actually been in their shoes, and specifically women who had been in their shoes, to be able to advise. And to me, I find that adds a different level of advising. Lots and lots of people go into coaching and advising and all of this stuff. But for me, it was essential to have somebody who's actually been in their shoes, going through the exit process. And by the way, we work much earlier than when it's like actually time to sell. We set a plan early on. It can take 2 to 3 years if they want. They don't have to want to sell tomorrow to prepare their business to be sellable today.
Gotcha. And just for the listeners and also for my edification, so are you working primarily with female entrepreneurs who are in the technology agency space, or is it agnostic, like all across the board?
Oh, it's agnostic. That's the whole idea. I specifically work with founders who are in the agency space. So that's where I will advise. If you're in professional services, chances are I will be able to advise you really well. But in tech, we have tech founders, CPG, we have CPG founders, retail founders. And that's the whole idea behind the Whisper Group, is to build that collective of women who've exited and really be able to match them with folks in their vertical.
In terms of mentorship versus sponsorship, those are 2 buzzwords that I hear a lot, especially on LinkedIn. Like, how would you distinguish between mentoring versus sponsorship? Because my interpretation of sponsorship is, like, especially in the corporate setting, is you develop a relationship with someone who advocates for you when you're not in the room. And what I've seen, especially in venture capital backed startups, is that unfortunately, and this is just reality, is that female founders are getting less than 2% of total VC dollars raised, especially in 2023 from PitchBook. So yes, I understand the power and the impact of mentorship. But what about developing those relationships with those folks? I imagine it's predominantly men. When the female founders are in the room, when those funding decisions are happening with between the LPs and the GPs, to raise their hand and say, there's a viable business here. Let's put everything aside. We need to make sure this founder is funded accordingly to ensure that her vision goes from plan to execution to actual scale and to eventual sale.
So when you're on the topic of fundraising, there's a few things. First of all, definitely forming relationships with those LPs and the GPs and really getting them to understand and believe in your business. But also we need more women in the room in that space. So there are more and more female PE firms popping up. There are more and more VCs in that space. It's still a low percentage, but it's fabulous. So that's not to say, by the way, that we shouldn't be forming relationships with and networking with men, because the reality is most of our universe in which we play, if we're in this space, are male. And there's nothing wrong with men. It's just that when you have connections from women in the space that understand you, they're going to be able to advocate for you. So that's in a room of VC. When you're looking at exit planning, what you're going to want to look at is making sure that you have an advisor that's going to sponsor you, whether that's an investment banker that's like really gets your business, whether it's just an M&A advisor, or whether it's just a lawyer who's representing you. Depending on the size of the business, it can be a variety of different things, but you want to make sure that you have somebody who's negotiating on your behalf who really gets the business and believes in it.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally understand. I think there was a percentage that you included on the Whisper Group in terms of that exit, for female founders. Can you break that down for us?
Yes, Eric. Well, I will tell you, you talked about 2% of VC funds going to women, 0.8%. 0.8. That's less than 1% of exit dollars are going to women. So that means for every business that is sold, you've got all female founded teams, 0.8% goes to them in exit value. And that's really challenging. That's also from PitchBook. So my guess is that it's probably slightly higher if you're looking at some of the private companies that don't raise funds, because so many of us don't raise funds and there is a little bit more exit activity than that. But when you look at it, we're opening businesses at twice the rate of the population. So women are opening businesses, but we haven't yet really mastered how to not only scale them, but get them to a place where they can be sellable assets. And I think it's just we're early. And so for me, if my job will be done when I can help really close that exit gap numbers, like help women see that these businesses that they're starting, not only VC founded businesses, but like lifestyle businesses, they can be sold and become life-changing assets. If you just do a couple of like really smart tweaks, you can set it up for success in a big way.
And in terms of maximizing the asset, and especially when it comes to sale, what are some of those obstacles or inhibitors? I know you and I are having a conversation right now, and the listeners are going to hopefully be inspired to broadcast and advocate this message. But what is one, the obstacle, and two, how do we overcome that obstacle and that challenge?
Yeah. So when you're building a business, there's two, obviously the main part that makes a business sellable is showing that you have good revenue and good profit. You want to make sure that you have a healthy margin. You want to make sure that you have revenue that is predictable, that you can like really say like, okay, this is, if you're buying this business, this is what you're going to get. You're going to make this much and your revenue is going to be about this much. That's the business basics, right? But a business has a multiple. When a business is valued, it's valued on a multiple of usually a multiple of net income or EBITDA. So what you'll hear, like with an agency, you could be valued at anywhere between 4 to 10 times EBITDA. Well, if your EBITDA is $1 million, that's anywhere between $4 to $10 million. That's a huge swing. So even though you have the same profit number. So what makes one business more sellable than the other? First of all, having a diversified base of revenue. So if you're in the professional services space, lots of different clients. If you're in a CPG space, lots of different retailers are sold in, not heavy customer concentration. Another area is making sure that it's not totally based on you. A lot of times when you're a founder and a woman founder, you start a business, it's you and maybe a VA. And like, if it's just you, you better have processes that you can hand over to that client, to that acquirer that will help you really be able to say like, here, you could take this business and run with it. Because chances are any acquirer knows that when you sell the business, you're not there forever. And so I think that those two pieces are really important. And then also understanding what makes you different from everybody else. And really not just saying like, this is what makes us different, but being able to prove it. Those are some really key differentiators that will help you get to the top of the multiple. The goal is not necessarily that every business has to be so fast growing or it has to increase their profit every year. Those things are good. But it's also about how you get to the top range of that multiple by just putting some good business practices in place.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And in terms of like that distinguishing factor and being able to, again, create daylight between you and the competition, can you provide us with like at a high level, some of those steps that you take with your clients to make them even more marketable?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I did with Likeable, and that'll be a good example. So with Likeable, I wanted a differentiator. And with an agency, like almost everybody, if you ask an agency what makes them different, what are they going to say? They're going to say, our people, we have the best ideas, the best blah, blah, blah. Because the people are the only asset. Like that's what your asset is. Okay. But that's not enough because every agency is going to say they're people. So what we did in finding our differentiator was we surveyed our clients and said, why do you want to work with us over other agencies? I want you to be really specific. Like, why did you pick us? Why did we win? What did you like? We then did the same thing with our team internally. Why do you work here? What do you like? What do you think makes us better? We went through all of it and sort of plotted it out. And what we came up with for Likeable was that we were really faster than other agencies because we were doing social content. So you have to be fast. You have to produce a reaction to a meme within seconds. Or you're on community management. You have to answer when something goes wrong. You have to be fast. We really understood social. We remained really social first the entire time. We never veered from that and never tried to really expand. So people knew that when they had a question about whether or not TikTok was going to be banned or whether or not Be Real was anything of substance, they could ask Likeable and they would know. And then the last piece was that they really loved working with us. Probably our name was Likeable. We had to be likable. It's like people are waiting for you to not be. And so we developed a differentiator. That was, we offer faster service from the smartest in social with likability guaranteed. And every 6 months, we tested against that. Are we still faster than other agencies you work with? Are we still the first people you go to for social? And would you recommend us? Do you love working with us? And if the scores weren't good, we took action. And so what I encourage my founders to do is really look in the market, see what makes them different, talk to their customers, talk to their employees, figure out specifically what it is, and find a way that you can test against that. And that's where you have a real differentiator.
No, that is amazing. It's funny, when I speak to very early stage entrepreneurs, especially the really good ones, and the way that I think, again, this is opinion of one, why they're really good is because they do the unscalable things really, really good. I had a CBG founder on a couple episodes ago, and he put out bars from his he has migraine friendly snack bars.
Ooh.
It's called AMIA, AMIA. And essentially what he did, I think it was the first 50, 100 consumers who bought the product, he asked individually, what'd you like about it? What could we improve? And I'm thinking to myself, my mind exploded. How many entrepreneurs or how many founders, especially product or service, are doing that?
We tend to build our businesses around what we think people want versus actually looking into what people actually want. Because we're by ourselves, you don't have a ton of resources when you start, so you just build it okay, I think this, maybe this. But actually taking that time, those 50 calls he did, that's going to save him so much time. It's great. Fabulous.
So it's speaking with your consumers or the person or the people who are buying your product or service, the internal folks, seeing if there's overlap, testing against that, which is super interesting too. As an entrepreneur, I know we started this conversation talking about Mike and Cass. Mike is is at least when he was running Buddy Media, he was big on pivoting. As you know, Buddy Media started as an app company. And then pivoted
advertising. Remember advertising?
Advertising. Was it Saplets? I think that's what Saplets. I think that's what it's like. It's funny. It's like Jeff and I go back and forth over some of the past Buddy Media lingo, but it's about that pivoting. So what is your advice to, yes, Likeable was a social media agency, right? And that was the bread and butter, and you excelled at that, and you exited based on that business model. But for those early entrepreneurs, what's your advice on tweaking and pivoting and really refining their product?
Of course. I mean, when we started Likeable, we were building Facebook pages with tabs, and that didn't exist 3 years in. I mean, from the apps on Buddy. Buddy built their whole business on that. You have to constantly be pivoting and evolving as you go forward, and you have to plan to, because the market changes. Even if you look at with AI, et cetera. One of the things that we did, I'll just speak from Likeable's standpoint. One of the things we realized was that we had retainers where clients paid for a certain number of hours of our work, and it sort of wasn't working because we had someone would need a high production video one week, and then someone would need 100 tweets the next week. And we didn't know how to do that. And so we ended up pivoting and starting something called the content credit system, where clients would subscribe to a certain number of credits each month. And then the credits could be redeemed for different amounts of content. That was an evolution that never would have existed in 2007 or even 2010 when we started, but coming up with a way to make things easier based on the times was essential. And it's the same thing now with the Whisper Group. Like I launched it in June. We're currently recording this in July. Like I'm anticipating that a lot will change. Even my first product changed from June 1 to now. I've already had a change because I realized not that it wasn't working, but that I didn't enjoy it. Like the way I was doing it, I didn't like the time I was allocating. I wanted to change it up a little bit in terms of my product. Like I had immediately done a recurring product for monthly every month. You sign up for a year. And that is like a sound business practice. But what I found was that I wasn't sure that once I signed someone up that I would want them for the year. I'm a solopreneur right now until I really build this out. And so then I started and changed and said, okay, I'm doing an initial monthly program, do the month. And then if I see that this makes sense, then we go to the annual. Like that change happened because of what was important to me personally. But that happens with like market dynamics, all of it. You just always have to be prepared to pivot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's also too, it's funny, going back to the conversation you had with Cass in terms of like, when you have an idea, just go, like, just execute, just do it. Yeah. Just do it. Right. Just do it. But I think part of the apprehension, again, I'm just trying to read between the lines and based on personal experience is, there's, some reticence because of, I don't know what I don't know. And you don't, but then again, you're completing the sentence until you actually start doing. Because if you didn't start doing.
Migraine guy asked all of his customers, he doesn't know. He's guessing.
Guessing.
You have to you got to put it out into the universe. You have to lose the fear of failure. That's the thing. And that's what holds us back at the end of the day. Like, what if I put myself out there and I look stupid? What if I put myself out there and it doesn't go? What if I'm wrong? But what if you're right? So you gotta put yourself out there and try. And then if it doesn't work, then you pivot. It's, gotta have lose the fear of the failure. That's the thing that holds us back so much.
Oh, absolutely. And what's also interesting too is that you're also working, within the Whisper Group. It's like, it's a personal passion mission. It's your expertise. So you're really, I love these conversations because you're really working at the nexus of the Venn diagram of your life. I am. Professionally and personally.
I'll tell you, Eric, I feel like it's my life's work. Like this feels very different to me than like, I loved Likeable. I loved building it. I loved growing it. This is my life's work. This is a chance for me. And I agree with you and your whole concept of your podcast that if you're able to nail how you can build a sustainable, viable business and also put out good into the world and do good for the world, wow, do you win? And that's for me, like really where I am at in my life right now.
That is tremendous that you're able to articulate that. And in terms of, your impact, we talked about legacy, like, again, you're looking at yourself now, looking back, or because you really can't look forward, like, how would you articulate that legacy?
Well, I think my future legacy will be that I help women close the exit gap. And I think that my legacy now, I think I would say I pushed past a lot of self-doubt and fear and ran a business that was hard, that I cared about, but maybe wasn't like my reason for being, right? Like I built a business. I did my best. I extracted wealth. And from extracting that wealth, I was able to launch something without fear that like I started it because I felt that it could do well in the world. I didn't start it thinking like, oh, I could make a lot of money doing this. I started it by thinking like, oh, this can do good. And then the fact that I can do well and do good came from losing the fear by building a good, healthy business where I extracted wealth. So I think the legacy of the past is she built something substantive so that she could build something immensely meaningful. That's what I would say.
I love it. No, that's a great way to encapsulate, again, what you're working on now. And in terms of, you always wanted, like, you're very excited to do the work you're currently doing, which is great. I always love the expression, on Sunday going into Monday, you can't wait to put your jersey on. It's like an athlete. You just can't wait to run. And I can't take credit for that. That's, I think it was Gary Vee who may have said that, which is so true. But I also think it harks back to fundamental values, like your core values, like what makes your heart sing, as well as you makes your brain really tick. Like if I asked you right now, like, Carrie, what are your, let's say, 3 core fundamental values that you're able to articulate and are able to ensure are infused or incorporated in anything that you do?
I value kindness. I value connection with others, connections with my family and with others. And I value freedom. Freedom is really what drives the Whisper Group too, because I believe that with money for women will be how we extract and have the freedom that we need. Right now, the system is not built for working mothers and working women. And I think that if you can build a business that allows you to extract real wealth, then you can have the freedom that you deserve. And so, I always value kindness. I definitely value connection. I'm somebody who believes wholeheartedly in relationships first. And then ultimately freedom is a very, very big driver for me.
Right. Having the ability to do what you want to do on your own terms. Again, having relationships, is huge. And it's interesting, before our conversation today, I saw on your LinkedIn post, you were at the Ad Age Small Agency Summit up in Boston, and you were talking, and you brought your daughter with you. And one of the things that stood out to me, at least, was the importance of networking and building relationships.
So nobody teaches this in school, right? So Charlotte's going into her senior year of college, and she takes all these marketing classes and all this entrepreneurship classes. I'm like, okay, great. That's great. And I pay a lot of money for college, right? Like, it's expensive. At the end of the day, if I can teach her how to network, she'll do infinitely. The college is fine. But if you know how to network, you have a skill that is just not taught. And so I took her. It was funny. I said, come watch me speak. And then I'm hosting this dinner for these agency owners, like, come network. And she did. And it was really scary for her. It was scary. And I'm sure it was scary for me when I started, but like, she did. And I said, okay, if you want to start a conversation with someone, you don't know how to start it, just like compliment something they're wearing or do something. I was like, just do anything to start a conversation and then just go. And just like be honest about where you are in your life, like figuring out what you want to do in your career, ask for advice, always share, ask questions about other people, be interested. And it was the best. I mean, the conference was great. Speaking at the conference was great. Like, listen, small agency conference, they award small agency of the year. This was stuff that I never did as an owner at Likeable. I was always too afraid. Like, I also didn't have time to network as much with peers and do all that. I never got into that scene, but being there and like speaking and meeting all of these fantastic agency owners and then giving that gift to Shar, it was just the coolest thing. It was so cool. Thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cause I agree with you. Like, that wasn't taught to me in school.
No, who teaches that? How to network?
Yeah, no one. And it's funny because my dad is an accountant. He works for himself, and he going in high school, he would push himself to go to these BNI meetings in the morning,
yes.
at 5 a.m.
Yes,
and it was him and 30 other professionals who are in non-competitive industries. And he would get up and he would talk about what he does, and he would schmooze and meet and connect and build relationships. And that, again, looking back, that dot, like, oh, okay, maybe that's where I learned it from. But pushing yourself and putting yourself out of your comfort zone, you're right. Relationships make the world go round.
For sure.
It's super important. And what was Charlotte's take on the, afterwards? Like, did she give you any sort of?
Yeah, I mean, I think she thought it was fascinating, and she told me about people she liked and who she was. I said, send a follow-up email. And she said, okay, I will. And I said, remember that connecting isn't always about like who you want to get a job with or what, sometimes it's really good to start building your Rolodex. I don't know what the word is for Rolodex now, but building your LinkedIn connections. I don't know, building your iPhone contact list. I miss a Rolodex. I really do. But okay, so building your Rolodex early and often. I mean, if you start at 21, imagine how connected you'll be at 41,
Oh my goodness. And that's a thing. And this is like it's becoming more of a passion for me is there a rising senior in college that, through the ANA, I was able to mentor 2 rising seniors. And one of the things, or one of the many, hopefully, things that I got across to them was the importance of relationships. Because if I was me at your age now, I would be like, I would definitely want to absorb and try to meet as many people as possible. And build those relationships because they're super vital.
And it's very important for those kids to interact in real life because so much is online, like that you forget how to make eye contact. There's like all the things that we learn just from existing. They don't have quite the same. So it's really important to encourage young people to get out and even now, because so many young people are working from home, like it's like you really lose it. And that's tough. And so interacting in person is really important too.
And yes, interacting in person. Yes. I have an 8-year-old daughter and a soon to be 4-year-old son. So the 8-year-old daughter loves her iPad.
I know. But you know what? That's a godsend sometimes, gotta say.
It is. Yes, it is. It is when it's needed. But it's super interesting. You're talking about remote work and, younger people in the workforce working more remotely. As you're talking to your female entrepreneur clients who join the Whisper Group, right? Is one of the concerns potentially going to be, okay, as I grow this business and as I hire more employees, how do I foster a very collaborative and cohesive culture?
Have found, you know what, honestly, Eric, like I would have thought that. And many of these women, because many of them want to work from home because of their children and all of it, even before the pandemic, they've built a great culture online through Slack communities and conversation. Like it can be done. It's different. It is different from when I was building Likeable or you were in those buddy offices in those Halloween costumes. Like it is different, but it is still meaningful and it still works. It's just, I think young people, it's a disservice. Like when I think about like you met people at work and you form these friendships and like you do now too, but it's just a lot more spread out.
Mm-hmm. But you're still able to.
Yeah,
the means are still there.
They're there.
They're there.
They're there. Exactly. They're there. I see it. I wouldn't have thought it, but I do see it.
Excellent. So Carrie, before you and I recorded, you mentioned you're also a podcast host, the Exit Whisperer.
I am. Yes.
And I mentioned, and Cass, any upcoming episodes that you're able to share?
Oh, there are a lot of episodes that I'm able to share. Well, so the Exit Whisperer interviews exited female founders, so women who've sold their businesses. It's part of how I get guests on the show. I say, are you interested in being an advisor? So a lot of these women who are really great are really excited to give back to the future generation of entrepreneurs. Okay, so you'll already have heard Jessica Zweig and her great work. I think B. Dixon, who sold the Honey Pot for 9 figures, is really fantastic. Looking at, I interview all kinds of entrepreneurs, big and small, on their exits because I think it's really important to show the good, the bad, and the ugly of M&A. And I think some of my best stories are actually from people you've never heard of. I mean, they definitely have upcoming. We have Ali Webb from Drybar. We have B. Dixon. We've got a couple of biggies, but we also this week on the one that came out, and you can search back, was a woman who sold her PR agency to one of her employees. And it's like a fantastic, meaningful story. And I think it's like those types of exits that are great. It's every type of exit under the sun. So it's really, it's a great podcast and a fun listen.
When this episode comes out and in the show write-up, I'll include, a link to follow the Exit Whisperer. Where else can people who are interested to learn more about the Whisper Group find out more information?
Okay, Eric. So there's a couple things. So if you want to know about the disparities between male-founded businesses and female-founded businesses, you can go to closetheexitgap.com. That is a place where you can get a report. If you want to learn about the Whisper Group, you can go to wearethewhispergroup.com. And if you want to learn about me, you can always go to carriekerpen.com or follow me on any of my social media. I have invested for an entire year for doing daily videos and content and all of it. And I'm pushing forward with it, but it's very out of my comfort zone. So if you want to follow me anywhere and say love this or don't, comment and let me know, because I'm really I'm going hard on that. I'm trying really, really hard. So it's been a journey and been really fun.
Excellent. Yes. And it's great. Like some of the Instagram content that I've seen that you put out is really, it's not just theoreticals. It's like the actual, like in the weeds.
Yeah, it's a mix. It's like, here's what working capital is, like things that are very niche down. And then it's like, here's how I parent. Like, so it's like bigger. Here's what I think about parenting in the world. And like, the broader content tends to do really well, but the content that I feel the most passionate about is the stuff that really helps women like understand and answer some of the questions that they may not know and they may not have found anywhere else, even though it's really specific. So,
I imagine, there's a lot of steps, at least from talking to, other entrepreneurs, there's a lot of steps between 0 and 1, set up an LLC or an S Corp, Delaware, Nevada, a bank account, lawyer, general counsel, who's going to be my first hire, like there's so much rumination that happens between that, from start to like, again, opening the doors, that people don't really realize. So you're providing incredible value to the entrepreneurs who follow you and the entrepreneur aspirants who are thinking about starting a business. So I really do appreciate again all the content you put out, and I will include all those links in the show notes so you can follow and learn more about Carrie and the Whisper Group. Carrie, it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast. We can continue talking. But I'm really excited to see where the Whisper Group goes. And I imagine listeners will also be excited. And please let us know how we can be a resource as you grow the Whisper Group.
Absolutely. Well, I think what you're doing is fantastic. Love seeing it and here to support it in any way that I can.
Thank you. Thank you for joining this episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. Stay tuned for more insights from impactful business leaders. Don't miss out. Follow us on all podcast platforms to catch every conversation.